Welcome to Hometown Culture, your weekly Orlando Magic podcast, where your host Seth will be unpacking the news every week. Hello, welcome back to Hometown Culture, your weekly Orlando Magic podcast. Today is going to be the second part of the end of season interviews that we'll be going over. It will be the last part of the end of season interviews. We will be going over the Jalen Suggs, Markelle Fultz, Anthony Black, and Cole Anthony interviews. We'll also be going over the Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter, Goga Batadze, and Mo Wagner interviews as well. We'll also be talking about the end of the NBA semifinals that took place, seeing the Mavericks Timberwolves matching up in the conference finals and the Celtics Pacers matching up in the conference finals as well. We'll also be going over game one of the Celtics Pacers series as that happened on Tuesday night. Very, very amazing game. Can't wait to get into that. And then we'll also be going over some of the rumors surrounding the Magic, as well as Jalen Suggs' all-defensive second-team appearance. All right, so to start off, we're going to be going over some of these interviews here. And now, like I said, this will be the last interviews that we'll be going over for the end-of-season interviews. The way I did this, there's a lot of players on this team, and I wanted to choose a select few that I would be going over in-depth in the podcast. So I decided to choose 4 guards and 4 front court men to go over throughout the duration of this podcast episode. And so we have 8 interviews to go over. And to start off, we're going to start off with the guards here. And starting off strong with Jalen Suggs. A lot of these interviews also had very similar moments, so I'll probably be touching a little less upon some of the similarities of these interviews. Just going over general, starting off, we have the main thing that was basically the question asked first for each player: how proud are you guys with the accomplishments that you've been able to achieve this season, playing together, playing as one unit, becoming a top 5 defense in the league, and also making it to the playoffs and going as far as you did. And basically every answer to this question is just how proud this team or these players are for this team, and how proud of the accomplishment, how proud they are of each other and themselves to get to this point, and their improvements that they made this season. And it was really cool to see just the optimistic viewpoint of these players, because you come out of a Game 7, once again, these interviews happened right after Game 7 of the first round. You come out of a Game 7 and it stings, it sucks, you're hurting, and to be able to come out of that and the next day be able to look positively at the rest of this season, at what you guys were able to do throughout this season, I think is really, really good. It shows really good strength and character and growth in these players, in this team. And it was really cool to see Suggs, Fultz, and all the other guys be able to vocalize that. And I think that looking at the approaches, so Jalen Suggs also was asked about the approach of this team and how it's different. And he talked about how the approach to games and practice this season was different than previous years. You know, you had a goal, you had a standard, a goal that you had to reach. You know, it wasn't like previous years where you kind of were just going with whatever and trying to build chemistry and culture and whatnot, but like you're fighting for something. You guys believed going into the season that this was a playoff team, and to be able to go into these games with a different approach, go into the practices with a different approach, and understanding to a certain degree the level that you're trying to play towards, you know, and being hungry for that, made the team better. And I think that Suggs highlighted a very important part of like looking at the team success and how much better the team was, and also looking at how each player was looking to make the team better in that way. And that's why the team had the success they did, because each player wasn't looking out for themselves. They were looking out for the team, and they were trying to win however they could. And so this was a huge part, and I think that adds to the success of this team and just the character and togetherness of this team, because you have a team that was genuinely for each other the entire season. They were for each other the entire season, and they desired to win and nothing but win. And I think that made the environment and the culture so much greater and so different and unique from other teams as well. You also had another key thing that all the players had the same sentiment about was the acknowledgement of how important home court advantage is, how important the games throughout the regular season, back in January, back in February, the games where you're going against like a Charlotte Hornets, you're going against a Memphis Grizzlies, you're going against a Houston Rockets, you're going against, you're having a close game with the Kings or whatever the case may be. Like those games, how much they matter, because you're going to the end of the season, you're 1-2 games away from having home court advantage in the first round, and how much that home court advantage matters in the playoffs. And I think that them recognizing that is going to allow them to take the regular season seriously, and it's such a important thing, because you've seen teams in the past miserably fail, not focusing on the regular season, not understanding the importance of the regular season. And there's some merit to it. You saw the Bucks when they were not the number 1 seed, I believe, was the first time when they made it to the finals and won the championship, because they were prepping more for the playoffs. But they were still a top 3 seed in the East. It wasn't like they were slacking to like a 6 seed. And you see teams like the Heat, teams like the Clippers, who don't take the regular season seriously, who have players who have a history of not taking the regular season seriously. Now, I don't like to gripe on the Clippers as much, because the Clippers deal with injuries, and that's a big part of their issues. And Kawhi has been very vocal, surprisingly, very vocal about how his injuries are what prevent him from being on the floor, not this I'm just resting type of thing. And as whether you want to trust that or not is up to you, but when you look at a guy like Jimmy Butler and the Heat, you see a guy who actively has said in the past and shows through his actions that he does not take the regular season seriously. And you see how much harder it makes it for them, because through their two finals runs, they had it a grueling way to get there, going through some of the toughest teams just to get there. And I think that the Magic recognizing how important home court advantage is, not only just because you have home court advantage and you're playing at home with your home crowd, but also recognizing like, hey, if we get home court advantage and we're like a top 2, top 3 seed, our opponents are going to be worse. That's just factual. And now you have upsets every single year, but the fact of the matter is, when you have a higher seed, you have an easier road out of the first round, which makes the tax on your body less going forward. And so I think that the home court advantage and the importance of that is so important, and I'm glad that all the players are recognizing how important it is, because of the fan support, because of the momentum shifts in the building, and moving forward and going forward. Yeah, and I think that going forward as well, Jalen Suggs also talked about his own personal growth, growing spiritually, and how that sort of starts all of the other growth for him. And I couldn't agree more. I think that being right in spirit, being right in mind is the main thing that helps to grow. It's the main thing that helps with motivation. And I think that him prioritizing that is only going to make him a better basketball player in the future. And he talked about taking a break before jumping back in the lab. Going to be working hard this summer, but it is important as all things to let your body rest, let your body recover and heal from the taxing season, and be able to jump back and get back into the lab and utilize that hunger for more success, which he talked about as well towards the end of his interview, talking about being hungry and wanting more and wanting to do better. So it's really, really cool to see, and a great interview for Suggs. Moving on, we also had Markelle Fultz. We had Markelle Fultz talk about his extreme pride of the group as well, and enjoying finishing the season healthy with these guys. And I think that Fultz also talked about, I believe, like the chemistry that is built up when you're able to stay on the floor longer, because not being there the entire seasons, you're not able to build up the momentum and the chemistry needed to be able to play well with these guys that you're on the floor with. And I think that part of being healthy is, like, part of the benefits of being healthy is being able to build that chemistry, build that familiarity with your teammates. And I think that Fultz was able to do that this season. He enjoyed doing that this season. We also saw him talk about wanting to stay in Orlando. Whether or not that comes to fruition, we don't know. The offseason, it's a business. I would be surprised. I would be very surprised if this is the same group that comes in next season. And it sucks because this group's very, very close, very tight group. And Fultz expressed wanting to have the group stay together and just run it back. But at the same time, that's just not likely, I don't think. And so, but it's cool to see Fultz wanting to be a part of Orlando, understanding how impactful Orlando has been for him in his career and his life in general, and then wanting to stay and be a part of that culture that's been built here. And it's really cool to see and hear. And I would love to have Markelle Fultz back for another season, another few seasons. But we'll see what the future holds. He's a great player, and I think that he definitely has a place in this league no matter what. And I think that going forward, we'll see if he can continue to develop. Hopefully, maybe develop more than just a mid-range shot, but be even a streaky shooter at best. Would be some sort of improvement there, but we'll see what happens in the future. Fultz also talked about the fan bonds being super special, the fans being super patient with him and being super supportive of him and this whole team. And I think that when you're living in a smaller market, not that Orlando is a small market, I think we're classified technically as like a medium middle of the pack market type of team. But the fact of the matter is we're not like a huge market. And I think that part of not being a huge market like a New York, like a Chicago, like a LA, is being patient with your team and being able to be patient and not upset at the same time. And granted, we can have our gripes with this team. We can be upset with this team when it's warranted, but it's not going to be at the level of like a Lakers type of hatred for their own team, you know? So I think being patient is part of the fans' job, especially in these lower markets. And I'm glad that the fans have been able to show their support and show their love for this team and for this organization and for these players. And I hope that it's an inviting thing for free agents and possible assets that may come into Orlando, that they'll see the fans and want to be a part of that. Fultz also talked about how he's been amazed by Paolo. Everyone basically who was asked about Paolo Banchero had the same answer, being completely amazed by Paolo and his growth and his development and how good and amazing he has been as a player, and being super grateful to just be able to play by his side, but not only just his amazingness as a player, but also as his character. Many of the players talked about the character of Paolo Banchero and him being able to be supportive of his teammates and be a good guy for everyone that he comes across. And it's really cool to see like that your star player, you know, is not only great on the basketball court, but great as a person, and you can really get behind that and support that. And I think that's part of why this Magic squad has gotten so much love from the fans, is because every fan sees how good and how kind and loving and whatnot these players are to the community around them and to each other. And it's just really, really great to see. We're going to go into Anthony Black's interview next year. And to start off, Anthony Black's a rookie. He talked about a lot of his experience here and he loved being part of this group. And we always go back to this group. We've been constantly going back to the group as a whole throughout all these interviews, and just how much these players loved being part of this group and how special this group was. And it's a great thing. It's a great thing. It's going to be one of, I think, a fan favorite Magic team for years to come. And yeah, it's just been great. And it's cool to see how that also influenced a rookie coming in, shaping his view of how tight a team can be and how successful that tight team can get, you know. And Anthony Black also talked about his struggles getting used to the schedule coming in. Of course, you're going to see a lot more like developmental questions and developmental views from Anthony Black, because it's his first season and he was asked to take on bigger roles that I think he stepped into very well this season. And I think that's something that he said in his interview, which has me hopeful for his part to play in this team and this team's success, is that he wants to make his teammates better. He wants to make things easier for his teammates, whether that's shot creation, whether that's shot making, just opening up the floor and helping his teammates be better and perform at a high level in the best way that they can. And I think that having that is a mark of a true point guard, is like allowing the team to be better, not just going in and trying to do the things for yourself, And I think Isaiah Thomas, from the Detroit Pistons, had an amazing quote about how when you have the ball, you control the movements of 9 other people on the floor. And I think that if Anthony Black can really step into this like playmaking and creation role, and also be a threat in and of himself, can really become and step into and become a piece for this team that helps them to win and eventually hopefully win a championship. And it's really great to see how he views his potential role for this team going forward already. It'll be great to see how he develops throughout the offseason. He looked eager to get into the lab and start training hard over this offseason. He looks excited. He saw good developments in his shot making. His confidence went up a lot this season, he said, and just appreciating and being grateful for the good experience that he was able to have this year, being a starter, watching playoff games, whatever the case may be. I think it'll be a great ride with Anthony Black, and we'll see how he develops as a player and what the Magic end up doing with him going forward. I'm very optimistic about his future here, and we'll see what happens. And the last guard that we're going to go over is Cole Anthony. Cole Anthony is, once again, expressed his pride and appreciation for this team. And he also expressed his optimism and looking forward to build in the future and going forward, building off of this year, building off of the next few seasons. And I think that it's going to be great to see how his role fits in all of this and how he can potentially develop as well. But I think that him being excited and looking forward to being part of this team, I think adds to this team as a whole, where you have players who are completely bought in. And it's super, super important to have those players who are completely bought into the team success and doing everything they need for the team to be successful. And it's going to be great to see just how he continues to develop, and hopefully flourishes here in Orlando. And yeah, you also had him talking about working on his mental health over this season. He talked about being able to work through his mental health during the offseason and throughout this season, the next season, and allowing for as little distractions as possible to help him to be able to just hone in on his game, hone in on his craft, and do everything he needs to be able to win. And it's gonna be really cool to see how he is moving forward. I think that it's gonna be really cool. I think that he talked about motivation and the motivation to do better, especially being so close to a second round appearance in this playoffs, that I think that he voiced, I think, what a lot of the players are feeling, where it's just like wanting to do better, wanting to improve and take that next step. And a lot of the players express this, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see how much they improve and how hungry they are for more going into the next season. And of course, relaxation being very, very important before getting back into the lab. And I hope that these players take their rest seriously and are able to heal from the long season that they just played through. And I hope they appreciate the rest that they are able to get here. And one last thing before we move on to the forwards in these interviews, Cole Anthony also praised Paolo and his greatness, and even hinted at a potential All-NBA appearance, which, I mean, I don't believe that we've gotten the All-NBA teams announced yet, but you sure as heck think that Paolo has to be in those conversations for that All-NBA third team. I'm not saying that he's gonna win it. I am not. I'm not entirely sure that he will be able to pull off this season, but I do think that is something that is very much in his future, and it'll be very exciting to see the day when that happens and when he eventually is able to come into his home as hopefully an MVP caliber player, and we'll see how he develops. And it's cool to see how much support his teammates have for him, whether it's Cole Anthony, Fultz, Suggs. All these players trust and believe in Paolo, and that just has to mean the world to Paolo Banchero now. Now we're going to move on to the forward interviews with Batadze, Wendell, Mo, and J.I. All right, so to start the forwards or front court interview, because I guess Batadze is technically a center, and so is Wendell and whatnot, and Mo. But to start the front court interviews, we're going to start off with Batadze. Goga had a tremendous season this season. He helped the Magic win a lot of their games early on, especially when Wendell was out. And I mean, he was impeccable. And I mean, he showed a lot of gratefulness in his interview, and we'll get into that. But first, I think that he voiced a very simple thing that really helped towards the Magic's success at the beginning of his interview, knowing what we were capable of and executing that. And I think that, and this was what Goga Batadze had voiced in basically the first question of his interview, is that going into training camp, coming out of training camp, the Orlando Magic knew what they were capable of. They knew exactly what they could do and what their abilities were. And being able to execute that and do everything right to be able to win as many games as they did and have the increase in wins that they did from, I believe it was 34 last year to 47 this year, is huge improvement. And I think a lot of it comes from that confidence in their abilities and the improvements in their abilities, and having that confidence in their improvements. And I think that was a really brilliant thing for Batadze to point out. And he also talked about wanting to stay in Orlando. He voiced his gratefulness immensely about how the Orlando Magic picked him off on waivers and trusted him and entrusted him in having the abilities to carry the load when we were facing injuries to Markelle and Wendell, and come in and help carry the load when those guys were out early in the season, and help this team to many wins in that time. And just that gratefulness that he has to know that he still has a place in this league, and some of it is because the Magic took a chance on him, and because the Magic offered him that contract and welcomed him in with open arms, saying like, hey, we got you, and you're going to be a piece in this team that helps this team to real success. And it was really cool to see. And going forward, Goga has more things to be focused about. I mean, for some of these players like Franz, like Goga, you have more things to look forward to, like Mo Wagner, more things to look forward to over the summer. You have the Olympics coming up. The Georgian team has not qualified yet, so Goga will be putting his focus towards the training camps and qualifying games for the Olympics. But a lot of stuff to look forward to going into the next few months here as the Olympics approach. And I think that Goga also vocalized his desire to want to improve more, get into better shape, get into having better abilities and more confidence in his abilities going forward, because it's a difficult environment playing in an environment like the playoffs, playing in Euro basketball, playing in the Olympics. Like, it is a difficult environment to play in. And I think that it was cool to see Goga express wanting to step up to that challenge. And it'll be interesting to see how he develops and how much trust the front office has in him to maybe bring him back or use him in different ways next season if he's back next season. And we'll see what happens, but it's going to be really, really cool to see Goga and where he goes, because he's been one of my favorite players this season for sure. And now moving on, we've got Wendell Carter's interview. Wendell gave us a little more information about how the team was prepared to go to Boston. The team was prepared to go to Boston and play in Boston for that game one that the Cavs ended up playing those couple of days later. And it sucks. It definitely sucks to lose all of that, and it stings a lot. But he also talked about utilizing that well and as motivation going forward, and learning and trying to see what we can do better to be able to win next time. And I think that's super good, a super good way to look at things mentally, and to be able to learn and improve going forward and going to the next few seasons. Wendell also talked about how he struggled this season mentally and struggled to really live up to expectations because of the hand injury, and like how it affected him physically throughout the season with his pain and whatnot. And then also having to pick up the success that Goga and Mo had. You had many critics saying that Wendell might be very expendable, and that still probably think so because of the success of Goga and Mo. And now living up to that's very difficult, and picking up the success that Goga and Mo were able to bring while Wendell was out. He voiced how he a lot of the times did not feel good enough for this team, for this organization, for the fans, and to just be good enough to carry the mantle and go forward and be the center for this team that we needed him to be. But I think that he also looked at the flip side of things about how he was able to help this team win some games, how he was able to come up big in the playoffs and help the team in the playoffs win the games that they did, and make it close and step up into the roles that he was asked to step into. And regardless of how things ended, I think that Wendell needs to look at this season and recognize, like, hey, he had made a huge contribution in this team, and not hold his head down, because you got to recognize how much his impact on the floor was, regardless of what the result was, regardless of how the ups and downs of the seasons and the struggles that were there. You have to see how great his impact was, how good he was in his highs, and look to make that the consistent standard that he plays at. And I think that he's begging for a healthy season. I think that he really, really wants it. And I think that he's looking forward to the rest and the healing for his body, and hoping that next season looks a little bit different for him at the very least. And he also talked about Paolo Banchero as well. Talked about him having the sky as the limit, and literally voicing that he's probably going to be a future Hall of Famer. I mean, I can't disagree with Wendell on that one. Of course, we've seen many careers fall short of expectations, but looking at what Paolo has been able to do now, looking at what Paolo has been able to do so far in his career, and what his resume may end up looking like if he stays healthy and avoids any massive injuries, is like Hall of Fame's the limit for sure. Hall of Fame is there, and I think that the confidence, like I said before, the confidence that these players have in Paolo is just so impeccable, and you gotta love it. And I also enjoyed the fact that Wendell voiced his concern about staying hungry, recognizing that, hey, we made the playoffs this year, but that should not let us become complacent. I think that the entire team agrees with that. Like, looking at this and be like, hey, we can't expect this next season. We gotta work for it. We gotta expect ourselves to be not in this position again, and work for that position and be hungry for it. And I think that attitude is going to help us to be able to play these games next season in the regular season and really go for each and every game, and recognizing the importance of each and every game and living up to that and stepping into that. And I think that's super important. We also had Mo Wagner. Mo Wagner's interview was pretty interesting, and I mean, he also had some moments talking about the Olympics, but he talked about his gratefulness for the organization, for the team, the upward trajectory that he sees going forward in this team. And I think that Mo's here to stay. Looking at this interview, I didn't see a world where Mo leaves this team in any way, shape, or form, whether it's through trade or free agency. I mean, he is locked in, as locked in as you can be. And I mean, he's excited for the future. And that's all you can ask for your young players, just to be excited and bought in. And that's very much displayed here. And he also talked about home court mattering, and also voiced a little bit more detail, like how it feels, when you're on a road game in the playoffs, like how a 9-point deficit feels like it's 19, and how much harder it is to gain momentum and to gain confidence in your abilities to come back and win those games where the crowd is just completely shutting you out and you can't communicate with your teammates, and it's super difficult throughout the entire time. And I think that giving that perspective helps even more to vocalize how important home court is. And I think that everyone in this organization, from the fans to the players to the coaches to the front office, knows that home court is so vital in the playoffs, and that next season we need to make sure that we do everything in our power to make sure we have home court advantage in the first round. He also talked about growing in efficiency, growing in both sides of the ball, both defensively and offensively, in all of the ways that he needs. And I think that, it's generic, but like, what else you gotta say? You gotta improve. You gotta be better if you wanna have this team elevate even more. And I'm glad that these players are looking to improve, looking to get better each and every single day with all the ups and downs, and aren't getting complacent because of the little success that they had coming into the playoffs. He talked about the turnover, and the turnover is interesting. Jamal Mosley also talked about the turnover and being at peace and content with whatever happens, because change is going to be inevitable. And I think that Mo Wagner talked about like how the team is sort of already like accepted that things are going to look different next season, and how that's going to be okay, and that what we do is what's going to be important. How we react to it, how we bring in the new faces that may come, is going to be important to the success of this team next season, and getting them to be bought in on the culture, and getting them to be bought in on the togetherness of this team. And it's going to be very, very important. And I think that while it will be bittersweet to see this team split up, I think that it's going to be really interesting to see what the Magic add on to this team, what the front office adds on to this team, and what improvements will be made going forward here. We also had Mo looking with optimism, saying that we aren't too far away. We aren't too far away from something big here, and I have to agree. There's of course the issues of like a lot of steps, like not too far away. Like I don't think that we're just like one step away from championship contention, but I think that we're only a few steps away, and I don't think it's as big of a gap than we've previously suspected, because we were the 5th seed this season. We had 47 wins. Paolo has been emerging this entire season and could very well step into superstardom next season. And Franz could definitely take another step next season as well. And we could see Cole Anthony have a comeback season next season. We could see Anthony Black develop into something more next season. We could see maybe Caleb Houston developing into a consistent and reliable bench piece. We could see Jet Howard potentially become a guy who can come into the game and improve and on defense and in his shooting. It's all going to be very, very vital to our growth, but it's not too far away. There's definitely a world where in 2 seasons, 3 seasons, we look at this Magic team and they're already in title contention. Is that going to happen? Who's to say? But there's definitely a world where that is possible, and I definitely agree with Mo. I don't think it's too far away from now. Mo also talked about his amazement by Paolo Banchero and the whole group in general, just how much the group has grown and how good the group was this season, and how much more that makes the loss sting, going in and knowing that you're capable of so much more than what we ended up with, and ending up losing like that. But like you said, you got to move on and got to use it as motivation and go forward and improve and learn and do better. And hopefully we'll be on the other side next season. The next and last interview we'll be going over today is Jonathan Isaac. Jonathan Isaac also expressed his extreme pride in the group. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say about how much more can you say about how proud we are of this group. It was an amazing group, and it's amazing to see how much the group and the players and the coaches and the staff recognize how special this team was. And Jonathan Isaac also talked about how awesome it was to be finally mostly healthy in a season. I don't think he played over 60 games. I think his games was 50-ish. I don't remember the exact number, but he definitely played over half of his games this season. And I mean, man, you've gotta love that for Jonathan Isaac. You've got to enjoy the fact that he was able to grow in being healthy and also being able to grow in confidence in his health and not be afraid of injury throughout as the season progressed, because you see a lot of players coming back from very serious injuries have a lot of hesitancy, and being able to see Jonathan Isaac go from that hesitancy to a guy who is giving it his all on the floor and leaving it all on the floor was really, really, really cool to see. And it was a really cool battle. It was a really cool battle for Jonathan Isaac to just witness how he went down back in 2020 and coming back all these years to now be such a vital piece to this team is so special, and you've got to love the perseverance from JI today, or this season, and throughout the last few years. And other than that, Jonathan Isaacs touched a lot of the other areas the other guys talked about, having home court matter a lot, the fans being fantastic this season, being optimistic for the next season. And he also talked about working on his brand, working on his next shoe, the Judah 2s, I believe he said. Going to be very interesting. I still have not purchased the Judah 1s, even though I will probably do so, because man, those shoes look very, very good. And he also talked about Paulo and Franz both being special, both of them playing hard, working hard, and it being a joy to play with those guys. And he also talked about how much he hopes the team can stay together as much as possible, but recognizing that no matter who's here, togetherness is the culture of this team. And that made put a smile on my face, man, because no matter who comes in this organization, who comes into the city, the culture has been built and established that this team plays together and works as a team and not as individuals. And man, it's a special thing. And I think that core of what the Orlando Magic have built in this era of Magic basketball will stay for a very, very long time. All right, now we're going to be moving on to a very humbling segment for me, because in the last a lot can happen in a week. Let's just say that a lot can happen in a week of playoff basketball. But let's just go over some of the stuff that happened in the last week. So to end off the semifinals, we saw the Mavericks take out the Thunder on what was for some reason a controversial call. I didn't think it was that controversial. I think it was blatant that Shea fouled PJ Washington on that shot attempt, and it does suck that the season ended on those free throws for the Thunder. But I mean, you gotta look at this season as a pretty good success for the Thunder. They were the number 1 seed. They made it out of the first round in a sweep. They took the Mavericks to 6 games and now are going home and have nothing but hope for the future. They have a ton of assets and they have a lot to work with going forward. They have a solidified superstar. They have a potentially solidified second option in J-Dub. They have a budding young player in Chet Holmgren, and they have a lot of great supporting pieces and a lot of assets to be able to go out and get players that will fill in their weaknesses in their size and in their rebounding. So very optimistic to see where the Thunder go from here. And the Mavericks, man, Mavericks are looking dangerous. The dark horse of this playoff run, they are in the Western Conference Finals. Can they make it happen? I don't know. I don't know yet. I have to see what happens in this game one. My prediction going into the series, I feel very confident in the Timberwolves, but we'll see what happens after game one. And not to judge a series by just one game, but I think that game ones can be very telling about how the series could potentially go going forward. And so we'll see. But let's get into the humbling stuff, because in the last podcast, I said that the Pacers were going to be out after this series. And look where we are. We are in the Western Conference Finals. The Pacers are still playing. Oh my goodness. I genuinely, after seeing game 5, I genuinely did not believe that the Pacers could pull it out and win 2 games, one of them being in Madison Square Garden for a game 7. Genuinely did not believe that. And they did it, man. And not only did they do it, but they did it in a pretty dominating fashion. They dominated in game 6, and they dominated in game 7. And Tyrese Halliburton, man, he played phenomenally. Pascal Siakam played phenomenally. You got some great performances from their supporting cast. It was great. It was great to watch. And I mean, I couldn't have been more wrong. And they have been the surprise of this playoffs. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I do not care if Jalen Brunson broke his hand. I do not care if Giannis was injured and Dame was injured in that first series. I do not care. This Pacers team is good. And the fact that people are belittling their success and demeaning them because they faced injured teams is absolutely disgraceful. This Pacers team is good. They've proven that they're good. And I cannot believe that people are actually discrediting them for their wins because of a few injuries. Injuries are a part of the game. And if you can't accept that, then I don't know what to say to you. But injuries are part of the game, and they played the opponents that were in front of them, and they beat the opponents that were in front of them because they're a good basketball team. And they proved that again last night against the Celtics. But before we get into that game, let's get into another humbling moment with the Nuggets versus Timberwolves, which is probably where I should have started, considering that the Pacers are facing the Celtics right now. But Nuggets versus Timberwolves, the Nuggets got destroyed in Game 6, and I mean, I didn't really have much to say about that. The Timberwolves came out and took care of business at home to force Game 7, and I was like, all right, let's see what happens. Game 7 is what it all comes down to. Between two teams like this, it really just comes down to looking at Game 7. I don't really have anything to say about Game 6. But, man, Game 7, who would have thought? A lot of Timberwolves fans and probably a few others would have thought, but who would have thought, man? The way Jokic was playing up until Game 6, from Game 3, 4, and 5, the way he was playing, man, I thought that it was wraps. I thought that the Nuggets had it because, man, was Jokic tearing them apart. But Game 7, man, the defense from the Timberwolves, the defense that the Wolves were given, the fact that Karl Anthony Towns was so great defensively. Now, granted, it wasn't just Cat by himself defending Jokic. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But Cat was a big reason why Jokic was contained the way he was. And I mean, the stat won't say at the end of the day, but that second half, that was rough, man. That was rough. And to look at that game, seeing how Anthony Edwards played, he played like a superstar, man. He was locked in defensively, and in that second half, he really stepped up. And the end of the game stats won't show it. It will show that he probably had a stinker of a game at the end of the game. But when watching that game live, man, I honestly looked at Anthony Edwards. I was like, he has been the driving force of this comeback throughout it all. And you also saw Karl Anthony Towns have an amazing, amazing performance. And I was looking at that, and I was like, man, this is the payoff that Timberwolves fans have. For years and years and years of seeing this guy, Cat, come in and be great, but not really enough, and be all right, and be an all-star, but not enough, you know. And years and years and years of seeing this guy come in and do what he's done throughout all of these years. And now finally, we got to see Cat lead his team offensively to a victory. You got to see the defense of the backcourt and the front court come together, and it was amazing. It was beautiful basketball. And this was a game that you might have thought was wraps at the end of the first half. You might have thought was wraps when the Nuggets went up by 20, but no. They pulled up the Wolves pulled out the greatest comeback in Game 7 history, I believe they were saying on the broadcast. And man, was it fun to watch. And I could not believe my eyes. And there was also the problem of Jokic not being sat in the third quarter. I think that contributed to some of the key offensive rebounds that the Wolves had towards the end of the game. But, I mean, other than that, man, the Wolves fought for this one, and they deserve to be in the Western Conference Finals. And once again, for the 6th time in 6 years, we will crown a different champion. For the first time in NBA history where we have 6 different champions in 6 years. Insanity. The parity in this league, the story in this league is so good. And I think that just shows how difficult it is to consistently get back to the finals, and not get back to the finals and also win the finals. But I mean, you look at these teams like the last 5 seasons, the previous champions have not been able to make it back to the conference finals, or back to the finals. Maybe even the conference finals. I think it might be the conference finals. Like, it is insane how difficult it is to get back to the point where you put yourself in a position to win a 7-game series and win a title. And I mean, I think a lot of people are going to harp on me for bringing this up, but LeBron did it for like 10 straight years. And I mean, considering how difficult it has been shown to be in these past few seasons, I mean, I'm shocked at how great LeBron was in his prime. But it's just so crazy to see how difficult it is to pull this off season in, season out, like each and every year going to finals and putting yourself in a position to be able to win those, you know. So the Nuggets, man, did a phenomenal job this season, but the Wolves outfought them and are in the conference finals and have put them in a real position to potentially raise that Larry O.B. at the end of the season. All right, so now we're going to talk about the Pacers-Celtics Game 1 overtime thriller, which I'm going to be honest, I was not completely locked into this game. I was doing some other stuff while watching this game, but I was locked into that fourth quarter. And was that fourth quarter insane, bro? You saw the Celtics relinquish. I think they relinquished a 13-point lead that they had in the third quarter. The Pacers fought all the way back. The offense of the Pacers, man, I mean, it is great for a reason. And they like they said in the beginning of the game, the Pacers are probably one of the only teams that can keep up with the Celtics offensively, and they displayed that. And they also displayed some pretty great defense tonight as well. And I mean, you look at this team, and a lot of people wrote them off immediately. And I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be a 7-game series or nothing, or if it's going to be a close series at all after this game. But this game, man, they showed up and they showed out. And Tyrese after the game saying that they believe that they can still have a chance to come back and win one later down the road. I mean, that has to have extreme confidence behind that statement, man, or extreme belief in that statement, because it will be hard, because you had the chance this game to steal home court and you failed to do so. But I mean, I think that the Pacers still have confidence in themselves. I think they proved to everyone that they are a legitimate threat. And I mean, man, it was a game to watch. Jaylen Brown hit a huge three to send the game to overtime at the end of the game, which I had no faith in. I literally told my father, who I was watching the game with, I told him, I was like, the Celtics were down 5. There was like 43 seconds left, and I looked at him, I was like, the Celtics just blew this game. The Celtics just choked this game away. And they came back, and Jaylen Brown hits that 3. They go to overtime, and once they went to overtime, I was like, oh, it's going to be wraps. The Celtics got this, because the Celtics had the composure. They have the experience to be able to handle those types of instances. even though they almost blew it, they came into overtime and they handled business. And Jason Tatum stepped up for his failure in the clutch in the fourth quarter in that overtime set, and had 36 points to end it, I believe. And I mean, they're the favorites, but it'll be interesting to see how this series develops and what happens with the Pacers Celtics as we go forward. But I mean, it's exciting to see what may happen in the future for sure. Now, to end the session, we're going to give some praises to Jalen Suggs, making the all-defensive second team in his fourth season in the league. I mean, I think this was given. I think this was warranted. A big point out from the fans throughout the all-defensive team selections was that the front court players made up the first team and the guards made up the second team, which is a pretty interesting coincidence. But man, Jalen Suggs had a heck of a season, and I'm glad that he got the recognition that he did for his efforts on the defensive end, because he truly was the running engine of this defense for basically the entire year. And he gives his heart and soul out on that court, and he gives it all. And it's super, super cool to see him getting rewarded with something like this. And I mean, I'm not going to even lie to you. I think that this is probably the first of many for Jalen Suggs in the future. And I'm very excited for him and his future. We also have the rumors going around. We have 3 players I wanted to point out. We have Darius Garland. Apparently, the Magic are in the sweepstakes for a Darius Garland trade if Donovan Mitchell re-signs with the Cavaliers. And I mean, I'm not mad at it. I think that Darius Garland gives us a lot of what we're missing. And I would love to include Darius Garland. I think D'Angelo Russell was another name that was linked to us as a guard who can create. And while D'Lo is very inconsistent, I mean, he's better than having nothing right now, which is what we kind of have. And I mean, he gives a little bit of size, a little bit more size than Darius Garland does, I believe. And it'll be interesting to see if any of these things come to fruition. But I will say that Darius Garland is probably my favorite for out of the 2 guards, and D'Lo would probably be my settle for type of guy. Anthony Simons, of course, is the guy that I think most Magic fans would want in the perfect world, but I don't know if there's a world where that happens, unfortunately. But we also had one more player, Malik Beasley, linked to the Magic as people that the Magic are interested in. I mean, Malik Beasley's a shooter. He's lights out. So I'm not surprised by the Magic's interest in him. And if we could get him, I think that would be a great addition. I think that he doesn't bring much defensively, but I think if he can be passable as a defender, we can work with that as a Magic team, especially since we have so much help around him. So, I mean, I think that it's going to be a great offseason for the Magic, and it'll be very, very interesting to see what the front office does and what their decisions will be going forward. All right, that about wraps up this episode of the Hometown Culture Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening or watching. And once again, let me know in the comments or in the Q&A post on Spotify what you would recommend for me to improve this podcast. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a blessed day. God loves you. Peace.